So I'll just tell you a wee bit about myself. I'm from Belfast, and I'm 30, turning 31. So I went to school, secondary school, on I think it was just as the big IRA ceasefire was being announced. So, and my parents are from a mixed marriage. My daddy's from Southern Presbyterian, and my mother's a Belfast Catholic, so cross-border, cross-religion. Well, what's even more dramatic is that my mother's quite a staunch Catholic and my father's a complete atheist. But anyway, ecumenics were kind of just sort of a natural part of my life. Like, my mother was in a cross-community prayer group and things like that, so even though I went to Catholic schools, I was always mixing with people from all over the place. So the Troubles didn't really affect me the way they did other people. So this whole project was a real learning experience for me, hearing all the stories. I finished art college in 2006, and portraiture is just part of the work I do. You know, like a lot of artists, you do lots of different things, you know, maybe more commercial work and then more conceptual work as well. So this was quite a big thing, to do a whole exhibition of portraits. Anyway, so we'll just get cracking anyway. So we're starting off with Gerry Reynolds. So my mother was always a big fan of Gerry Reynolds. Like, you know, he's a very cool guy, and she would have talked to him, and he was a real support to her through the years as well. And I think it was the time when Stormont was opening for the first, the government of Stormont were having a big party to celebrate, you know, that Northern Ireland had their own government, and she asked Gerry was he invited, and he wasn't even invited, even though he'd been one of the people to support the politicians and the paramilitaries in the back rooms of Clonard and all these different places. He wasn't even invited. So she said to me, well, you know, he'd be a great person to paint, you know, and celebrate all the work he's done. And so then once I did that portrait, we started thinking, she started thinking, what about continuing and doing a whole series of portraits? Because there's so many people. He's just one of them. I mean, there's just countless others doing that, who have done that kind of work for years, or still doing it, and never got really acknowledged. So my mother then, of course, she's like an agent. So she met Basil McRae from the NI21 party in like the Europa restaurant or something, and she said, oh, my daughter's having an exhibition in the Culture Lawn. So of course he came up to West Belfast, and we talked to him about maybe getting an exhibition in Stormont. So that was me. I just found that last night. That was me tweeting to Marcin O'Muller, the Lord Mayor at the time, and Basil McRae. So it was good to just sort of get ideas from people that, like, would they enjoy something like that? Did people think that was an important thing? And so things started happening. So then I had to start thinking, right, well, I have to figure out who on earth am I going to paint? So we started off with these people who were like my mentors. So my mother, I just picked up her address book, and literally, you know, all the people that she's a physio, so a lot of the people she treated. Jenny Megan was a friend of hers who worked in the maze for like 30 years or something like that, as I don't think she was, I can't remember, she woman studies teacher in the maze. And her best friend was Ruth Patterson, who my mother also treated, who was a patient. Ruth Patterson was the first ordained minister, female. So, you know, a really amazing woman. She's one of the people from Restoration Ministries, and she would have been a very close friend to Alec Reid and Gerry Reynolds. Derek Poole was someone I just played boron with. I play fiddle, he played boron. So we played music together, and then it turned out that he was a mediator. So he was someone who was also a mentor. So from my mummy then, Ken Newell's wife was in her prayer group. You know, Ruth Patterson was one of her patients. Katie Hanlon down in Ballinafie in the Ormer Road. I remember going as a child with my mother to women's groups, workshops, arts workshops down in Ballinafie in this community group. So she was someone. Kate Kelly similarly ran workshops for women. Pauline Hegney was just a mother down the Ormer Road whose husband had been killed, and who set up the Wave Widows Against Violence Empowered. So there were all these people in my mother's life that she was suggesting that I paint. Jenny Megan, you know, Inez McCormick, Sheila Livingstone was, I'm sure you all know of Inez McCormick. Just all these, David Stevens who set up Coromila, I mean, just so many names started coming up. I went over to see Ruth and she gave me a whole other batch of names. Just so many people all over the city. I mean, there were people outside of Belfast and I didn't know the names were just mounting up and up and up. I didn't know what to do. Like, should I do all of Northern Ireland or like just one area or separate them or all bits? So I decided just limit it to Belfast. Greater Belfast. Sam Birch is from Newcastle, but he worked in Belfast. Derek Poole came up with a lot of like the people who are a bit younger, who are in, a lot of them would be in organisations at the minute, like Dippin and McGlade works in the Community Relations Council, Chris O'Halloran in the Belfast Interface Project, etc. And then once I talked to those people, of course, they said, you know, well, Martin McGill, for example, Father Martin McGill, who runs the Four Corners Festival, he said, well, I will let you paint me if you paint Joan Trew, who was a woman in Monkstown, who his church and the Monkstown church had done projects together, and she'd created this Christmas tree out of knitted squares that she'd got loads of women together to do that. So I said, okay, I'll paint her as well. Jim Ray, I went to photograph him, and he said, well, there's a man called Ian Milne coming to my house this afternoon, and you should definitely paint him. He's an undertaker from Portadown. He was a mediator between the Orange Men and the Drumcree crisis. So many people just kept coming up. Rob Fairmichael said to me, oh, you should definitely paint Pat Campbell. And yeah, so eventually I limited it to whatever it was, I think 32 in the end. And Malachy O'Doherty articulated it really well there, you know, about the selection. There are risks in the selection of subjects too, for some people will suggest that others should have been included or that some should have been left out. When it comes to the peace process, there are not simply two positions to take, two histories to write, two pantheons of icons. So, yeah, he kind of says it, you know, even when I brought my proposal to the Community Relations Council to produce this catalogue, they said, well, how many Catholics are you painting? How many Protestants? How many women? How many? And I was like, I don't know, I'm just painting the people who were peacemakers, I don't know. So, yeah, I was kind of putting myself in a vulnerable position, but my own kind of literal ignorance and naivety held me fast, because I was kind of saying, you know, I'm an artist, I'm not in the world of community relations, and I'm fascinated, I'm really fascinated by it now, and I'm amazed at the work that goes on, but ultimately I'm an artist and I was painting these people. So I'm giving you these two sort of viewpoints of someone who's now familiar with the kind of work that's going on, but also just as from a painterly point of view. So I had confirmed then Stormont for, I think this was then after Christmas. I decided, right, I've got Stormont confirmed to exhibit this exhibition that we've come up with in April. So I had January, February, March, April to get everything ready to paint 37 portraits. And that also included preparing a catalogue, because I knew I needed to gather the stories together of these people to make it worthwhile exhibition. So I thought, right, I better get cracking. So I went and cycled to see people, got trains, drove, went and took photos of them. And because it was January, February, the light was really not great. So it was kind of, some of the portraits were very difficult because the light was so poor. This is Sam Birch. So you can see a few different photos, you know. And as soon as I saw him, I knew he was going to be really easy to paint. And he was really one of the quickest portraits. So I'll just even read a wee bit from Sam's. I asked everyone just to give me, I think, was it like 50 words or something, really, really short, about sort of factual information about what they did, who they represented or whatever, and then a wee anecdote. So his anecdote, I'll just read it. A UDR man was shot in front of his son in the Shankill, and Father Gerry Reynolds wanted us to visit the family together. I was reluctant as I felt he was putting his own life in danger, but we did go. The parents of the man were receptive and appreciative. At one point I watched as Gerry and the mother wept together with their arms around each other. So that was him describing one of the visits and the Cornerstone community, himself and Gerry Reynolds and a couple of others. They, as every time someone in the area was killed, a political killing, one of them, one Catholic, two of them, one Catholic and one Protestant, would visit the family together, which was a pretty sort of, big thing to do in the 80s, early 90s. So, yeah, as I was doing my painting, I was also listening to all these amazing stories from these people, and just pretty mind-blowing what they'd been through, what they'd seen, and what they were doing, all the time. And I was painting pretty fast, so there's the paintings lined up together, not touching because the paint was still wet. And yeah, I was having fun, painting the hands was a big part of it as well, because people were very expressive with their hands. A lot of them, really powerful communicators, the way they would interact with people. Obviously, there's Ines McCormick in the corner there. Some of the people I painted aren't here anymore. Alec Reid is another one. It's a very famous photograph of Alec Reid. I think it's outside Clonard, around the area Clonard, with, I think it was one of the police officers that was killed. So he was one of the higher profile people that I painted. A lot of the people I painted, no one had heard of them. So that was another aspect as well. Quiet Peacemakers, how quiet was he if he was on the news all the time? But I thought he was a very important person to paint. So I'm just looking at a few of my favourite portraits, I suppose, out of the collection. This is Ian Milne, and quite a charismatic person, full of life and connection with people. And I really enjoyed painting his hands as well. So he's the guy, he's the undertaker from, I think, is it Newtonards maybe? Portadown, I can't remember. Very cool guy, and he was absolutely thrilled, to have his portrait painted. So it was brilliant to be able to bring that joy to people. I'll just read his one, actually, it's quite funny. So in Portadown in Lurgan, there were very few funerals conducted by Protestants for Catholics or Catholics for Protestants. About 6 years ago, someone walked into my office looking for me. "Do you bury Catholics?" he said. "Only if they're dead," he replied. Sheila Livingstone as well. I loved painting her. She had a very beautiful face. Everyone is beautiful, but she had this kind of vulnerability that seemed to come through as well. And I suppose because this wasn't a commission and I was accountable to myself, basically I could, be a bit more experimental with the paint. I mean, the faces are all very graphic. But I did, use sort of larger brushes that I would maybe use for commissions that I was getting paid up front for. And I was going to Neil Shawcross's, a Belfast artist. I was going to his studio every Tuesday. He had lunches in his, well, he still does, in his studio. So I was kind of influenced by the work I could see him doing all the time. Brian Lampkin, he began Lagan College, the first integrated school in Belfast. It was winter, it was January, February, so it was freezing outside, so a lot of people I painted had their hands in their pockets. Because of that, I had to ask some people, like, could you please if you use your hands usually, could you use them for a while? I know it's freezing, but Roisin McGlone, she works for an organisation called Interaction, which is a piece around the peace wall on the Shankill. And she actually wrote to me after the exhibition once she'd seen her portrait, and she wrote to me and she said that she'd never seen herself, she'd always looked at herself and seen herself in black and white, and for the first time she'd seen herself in colour. And she'd always thought of herself as a drab, dull person, and now she saw herself as she really was. So that statement alone made the whole exhibition worthwhile, that someone was valuing themselves. And I thought she was particularly interesting as well in that when I was asking people for these blurbs, she just couldn't, she was good at, you know, she just sent me all this information back, like Roisin has worked for X number of years at this organisation and done this and achieved this and done that, but she couldn't tell me like a little anecdote. She couldn't really express who she was apart from her job. She just committed everything of herself to her job, and she found it very hard to articulate, like, you know, kind of who she was, or see if I can read her one, which I thought was very poignant. And so I just used something that she had told me herself. So it was in 2003 I organised for the gates at the Lanark Way interface to be painted. Along with some community artists, the kids from both sides were supposed to paint the gates, but they were too busy chatting each other up and playing football with each other. They were just a load of kids being normal, and there hasn't been trouble at those gates since. So that's just like one tiny little thing that she has done. You know, really amazing people. And she's still working away, and her organisation actually found the money, clubbed together to get the money to buy her portrait. So I'll just talk a wee bit about this catalogue. It was amazing. Probably the first time in my life I got funding for something. I couldn't believe it. I got money to get something done really good quality. You know, I got it designed properly, proofread. You know, really lovely card on the front, because it just deserved that. The stories of all these people deserved to be presented beautifully. I forgot that I've got notes. And definitely the whole exhibition would not be the same without this. It's integral to it. I got funding on the condition that I would sell them and that the money would go back into future reprints as well. Compiling the information, I mean, the painting was the easy part. I am a painter, but compiling the information was an absolute nightmare. Trying to get the words down to a certain word count, trying to chase up all these people who are incredibly busy and are doing all this really important stuff, and I'm like nagging them about like bits and pieces of stuff. Oh, it was really difficult. And then liaising in between the funders and in between Stormont and between, it was very difficult, very stressful. And because the exhibition was, the first launch was in Stormont, that had a lot of red tape. So yeah, that was pretty stressful. I had to get the names of every single person who was going to be there. It wasn't like an open exhibition that people could just turn up at, which I was familiar with. Everyone had to bring their passports, and they would only let a certain amount of people in. And I thought there were only, you know, most exhibitions for one person, you don't get that many people, but the names kept coming in, people saying, yeah, and can I bring my family, can I bring this, can I bring these people in my organisation? So in the end, like even on the opening night, there was a queue, you know. I had these elderly priests and nuns like waiting outside Stormont to get into my exhibition. So in the end, the Stormont were very good, and they did bend over backwards and let more people in than they could have. So yeah, that just gives you an example of what's inside the catalogue. And yeah, it's brilliant. It's brilliant. And actually, I got a request from the National Library in Dublin for a copy. So nothing really like this has been compiled before. You know, peacemakers aren't really as sexy, I suppose, as, you know, the troublemakers. You know, that sells really well. So I got Malachy O'Doherty, you know, really famous journalist from Belfast, to write the foreword, and it was great because the same as what I'm doing now, he really looked at the painting itself as well as the stories. So just about, yeah, thought there, a portrait is a joint venture between the artist and the subject, and some more than others seem to represent the subject's input. For some people are more in control of how they project their image than others. And then he referred to this portrait. Pauline Hegney, by contrast, seems caught almost unawares, as she would in a snatched photograph. And she'd actually, one of her grandchildren had just been born. She'd just got news that a child had been born in her, I think her son's child had just been born. So she was very it was very poignant, you know, because I was there, and the reason that she had started her organisation was that her husband had been killed. And I'll just read the bit from hers. After her husband's death in 1991, Pauline, along with 5 other widows who had lost their husbands to violence and 3 church leaders, began the organisation Way of Widows Against Violence Empowered. And she said, I was 7 in 1970. In the evenings, my mother brought me over from the bridge from the markets to the short strand to visit my granny. She kept me on the inside to protect me in case someone would shoot at us from the road. And then, at 28, my husband was killed in exactly the way my mother had always feared. I didn't want retaliation. The person who shot him was just as much a victim as Carl. Let none of our children be afraid to cross bridges. So, yeah, it was nice that Malachy mentioned that about Pauline. And about Ken. Ken Newell will be pleased, I expect, with a rugged face looking towards the light. So that's Ken Newell, who continues to, he has the Clonard Fitzroy Fellowship between his church and Gerry Reynolds' church. That's been going for years and years. And Ruth Patterson, the face is made unselfconsciously available, and a candor is found there by Susan. So, yeah, I don't know, because I thought she was quite self-conscious, but maybe in certain, because whenever I went to take the photos of people, I'd really chat to them and try and make them relaxed, which isn't always easy, but yeah, managed to get there. So he also said, and this diversity of responses among people chosen for the mission they shared reminds us how different they are, probably that they wouldn't even all like each other, but their work for peace and reconciliation is only part of who they are and of who some of them are still yet to be. So yeah, his writing was just brilliant. It really articulated, you know, stuff that is quite hard to say, you know, that this thing that they wouldn't even all like each other. It's cool, like, it's not these people are like angels or whatever, you know, they're like humans and they're dedicating themselves doing this amazing work, but you know, they're just normal people. Any of us can be doing the work that they do. So the first opening of the exhibition was in Stormont, so this is the hall. It's very grand, very big, very polished, and once the pictures were up and the wine was out, someone actually funded the wine because it was going to cost an absolute fortune because Stormont only let their own caterers supply the wine and all that. But yeah, once the stuff was up and people were starting to come in, I was able to relax and really observe, you know, the reactions and people seeing their portrait for the first time, people who would never maybe have been in a gallery before or be interested in that kind of thing. Their painting was on the wall, and friends seeing each other, maybe people in the sort of peace and reconciliation circle who'd heard of each other, who'd seen each other talk, you know, admire one another or have been friends for years previously and not seen each other. So it was like a real celebration. It was a real party. Like, it was brilliant. Beautiful sunlight coming in. There's Vinnie McCormick there on the top right, who was in here yesterday, actually, Anna's McCormick's husband. And then the press arrived, so that was pretty class. Like, Martina Purdy, who's now a nun, of course, arrived to interview Leslie Carroll. So I'm just going to play a wee bit of it because it's quite it's quite effective. It's very short.
Belfast is a colourful canvas for the artist. Cultural tensions between the Protestant loyal orders and Catholics are captured in the work of North Belfast artist Joan Williams. But there is another picture from South Belfast artist Susan Hughes. Her exhibition has just opened at Stormont, called the Quiet Peacemakers. One of them says politicians alone can't bring peace, so what is missing?
One of the things that's lacking is the acknowledgement of the number of quiet peacemakers that exist, and perhaps a connectedness because of that. So maybe we need to all get ourselves together and make sure that we know what each other is doing. But that support and vision that comes from each other, I think, would make a big difference, and that then makes a stronger voice to those in leadership.
So that was Leslie Carroll from North Belfast. Yeah, of course, it was on the doorstep of the politicians. but not that many of them went to see it, unfortunately. I did get a few emails and some notes in the guest book, and a few of them did come on the opening, but to consider that it was in the place, well, their workplace, I would have hoped that there would have been more, and I sent an invitation to all of them and everything, but even that some of the politicians thought is a start. So Basil McRae was the person who sponsored it. If you have an exhibition, Stormont has to be sponsored by one of the MEPs. So he was great, and he introduced the opening, introduced the exhibition, and got my mother up actually, because she was the person that really got it all started. So it was great that she was recognised as well. And then Newell McAlinden, who's been working in Derry, I'm sure some of you know her. She spoke, and yeah, she was brilliant, and really talked about the youth. She would do a lot of work in education, arts education, so she really talked a lot about young people and example to young people and the future of the peacemaking. So yeah, it was a fun night, but at the same time, it was kind of like, the big house on the hill, the grandness of it all. It wasn't really what the whole thing was about. So I was very keen to show the exhibition in the communities that the people who I painted represented. So I got the first place I got requested to bring them was a place in Monkstown Estate in North Belfast. I've got pictures later on actually of it. And then after that, I'll show them later. And then I went to the 174 Trust in North Belfast, and I got funding for a panel discussion. So that was really important to start a bit like this, that the pictures aren't just on the wall, like that there's some explanation, some context given. So the 174 Trust is an old, I can't remember what kind of church it is. Was it Presbyterian or Church of Ireland? But it's an amazing building. It's now a community centre. The 174 Trust has been going for ages, but it's just in this new building. So the fact that it's a community centre, like there were women's groups, there's adults literacy, children's literacy, all this stuff going on all the time. So the portraits were viewed by just a whole mix of people in the middle of the city. This is actually one of the days I was setting it up. So that's the McCracken Summer School, and that's Linda Irvine there. Actually, I only noticed she's started a whole movement to get the Irish language spoken in East Belfast, so I'm actually going to her classes at the minute. Bill Shaw, the guy up here who I painted, he is the director of the 174 Trust. He couldn't even go to the opening because I asked him to open the exhibition and to do the panel discussion, but he couldn't because of his commitment to the local cross-community, was it the youth club football game that he had to be at, and that was his commitment, and he wasn't going to not be at that. So he did pop in his tracksuit just at the very start of the opening. So yeah, it just shows you the commitment of everyone. Gerry Reynolds, he's been at I think all the exhibitions. Legend. So this is the opening in there. So that's Kate Kelly, one of the people I painted. Just beautiful to see the pride and the joy that the portraits kind of created. That's Father Martin McGill there in the high vis. Roy Garland, who's a journalist, he was a journalist for the Irish News, I think, different newspapers. But he had the first red dot. A girl he had mentored, who is a professor in university in America, phoned me from America and asked me to put a red dot in his painting that she was secretly buying for him and his family. So I think he was pleased that night to see his painting being bought for him. Yeah, and amazing to just all these kind of people, that friends, family, strangers. The best thing is when strangers turn up at your exhibitions. That's brilliant. I love this, of Father Martin McGill with his cycling gear and his trouser leg tucked in. Malachy O'Doherty then opened the exhibition, but she was new at that time. Nicola Mallon, the Lord Mayor, she actually approached me and asked me could she come along too and could she say a few words. So it's pretty good when you don't have to chase up the Lord Mayor to come and open your exhibition. And then behind there's my art teacher from when I was in secondary school, so it was a real honour to have her there, someone who was so important in the development of my own art. So Malachy, again, he doesn't beat about the bush, you know, he gets straight in there, and you know, he described how arrogant he thought this girl was coming in talking about the Quiet Peacemakers and who did I think I was. And then of course when he started looking into it, he realised that I was just painting individuals, and yeah, he talked a lot about that. And then we had a panel discussion, so Derek Poole mediated, and we had Leslie Carroll, Martin McGill and Malachy. Leslie and Martin especially would work in North Belfast, on the ground with in their communities. So yeah, it was a pretty not heated, but it was a pretty intense discussion, and I was quite proud that I'd been able to create this environment where they didn't all agree with each other, you know, where they had quite differing views at times, but that was perfect. That was, you know, stimulating and interesting, and no one was wrong. It was just all part of the debate, I suppose. Yeah, and I think it was, yeah, each panel discussion I've had has been quite different. I didn't record the audio, but yeah, it was really powerful, and I came away thinking, yeah, this is more than just pretty pictures on the wall. You know, we're all responsible for the way our society is, and this is bringing it all home to us. The work that the Quiet Peacemakers have done, it's not like it's just, that's it, we have peace now, it's all gone, you know. Things continue in our society, and we're all responsible for it. So the community relations, yeah, they gave me funding to have these panel discussions and to hire rooms and to, you know, have a wee bit of food at the exhibition. So that's really been invaluable. And the more publicity I got, the more, you know, opportunities would come up, and I was asked to exhibit the work in Glasgow at the Mediate Scotland conference, so that was brilliant. They paid for me to come over and put all the portraits up, and it's just brilliant getting exposure outside of Ireland. So this is the church in Monkstown. So this is Joan, just below her portrait, the woman who made the Christmas tree out of the knitted squares, and yeah, it was class. And actually at that exhibition then, it was just the back of the church, like, they suggested that I ask for donations to go towards the framing of the pieces, so eventually I got them all framed with the donations. And this is the guy Jim Deeds from the church where I live, Holy Rosary, and then Bishop Abernethy. And opposite my exhibition was this amazing, it was far better than my exhibition, it was a knitted Stations of the Cross. It was class, so I had to put that in. It was absolutely amazing. So beyond Belfast, yeah, got to go to Glasgow, got to show them at the Mediate Scotland conference to all these mediators on the eve of the independence vote. And then also here in Derry, where I was working with INNATE, which is the Irish Network for Non-Violent Action Training and Education. So that was, I'm sure a lot of you know Roberta Batchik. Herself and Rob Fairmichael, who's one of the people I painted, run this organisation. So her connections with the Verbal Arts Centre, then with that we were able to set up an exhibition. And then I thought, well, this is my opportunity to try and step beyond the whole Belfast thing and start a series of Derry portraits. So we also, INNATE wanted to do a bit more as well and get a bit into the topic. So we got together and drew up criteria. It wasn't so much me, it was more them and Verbal Arts Centre people. We drew up this criteria for what qualifies. It's a kind of weird issue, but anyway. So we came up with this. What criteria do you have to fulfill in order to be a Quiet Peacemaker? It was just for this exhibition. So a willingness to cross boundaries, a commitment to peace either in a voluntary capacity or above and beyond the normal expectations of a job, innovation and creativity in their approach, and not just the usual suspects, so not just honouring those who are regularly honoured in other ways. So the people that the names we came up, and we went through lots of different names, and I don't know people here, so I wasn't really part of that. I was just like, yeah, whoever you give me, I will paint them. I was really just the artist. I'd been given other names by other people, but anyway, they came up with 3 names. James King, who's here today, performance artist. Actually, before I explain, I'll just explain this. So these are, I had been given the 3 names, and that was it. The exhibition had to go up. I got James painted pretty quickly. The other 2 then, we left them blank, just to sort of show that this was actually a living exhibition. I was at home trying to get these other portraits painted. And there's Rob Fairmichael, he's one of the guys from Innate then. So yeah, whenever, I think was it the portrait of Mary Brown went up, it was still wet, like. So yeah, so James, we chose him as one of the Quiet Peacemakers. Roger McCallum, who I can't even remember why he can't be here. He's doing some work, or you know, he's often in Nigeria doing work with the police force there. And Mary Brown, who works for Women's Aid. Just class people. Every person I've painted, you know, it's just been brilliant to go and meet them, because they're all very, very cool people, really, besides even all the work that they do. So I got those up, and we had a few events. I did a children's workshop, and Roberta and Rob did a few different workshops, and yeah, there was a good few people there, and also James did a performance. So it was brilliant to have. It wasn't just me and my portraits. It was like a living exhibition. You know, the collaboration with other people just makes things so much richer. And to have it in a place like the Verbal Arts Centre, where there's so much going on, and sort of different mediums as well. You know, kids groups coming in all the time, and authors all, you know, coming in doing workshops. So yeah, James very kindly gave me the piece of paper that he typed on. Yeah, so I had another panel discussion, you know, kind of much more low-key. The exhibition was put up in a pub down the Ormer Road as part of the community festival down where I live in the Ormer Road. So, you know, it's not just the Stormants that hosted the exhibition, it was just like the pub or a library, Dundonald Library. I've even lost count of the places. Anywhere anyone requested, I was like, yeah, that's fine. Brilliant. You know, the more people that see it, the better. And so the final, so I thought the final exhibition was going to be in another grand place, the City Hall, for Christmas. And the Lord Mayor, her theme has been unsung heroes. So each Lord Mayor has a kind of a theme. So hers is unsung heroes. So she really, and because I don't know, I think she's a year younger than me. She's very young, but because we're similar age, she just kind of sort of really endeared herself to the whole exhibition and really supported it all the way through. So yeah, the community relations, is it the I can't remember, community relations division of the City Council or something like that, funded the exhibition thing, you know, put on wine and scones and things for the opening. So that was brilliant to have that support. And we had a panel discussion, so it was the final one. The big guns got out, Gerry Reynolds and Ruth Patterson and Ken Newell for the final one. Derek again was chairing. He's a brilliant chairperson, so it was great. And Nicola herself, she opened it, but then she also requested that she interview me, which was a bit odd, but was great. Like, so she was a bit like what I'm doing now. I hadn't really even thought of me explaining things. It was always, I would just get the Quiet Peacemakers to talk, because they're the experts. But yeah, she was just asking me about the process. And then the panel discussion began, and the panel introduced themselves. That's Pauline Hegney, who I mentioned before, sitting in the background. Gerry's quite old now. I think he's like 82, 83, so it's a real honour to have him appear in all my exhibitions, and then on the panel as well. And these are the people who really began. This is Ken Newell's wife, and then other members of and David Stevens, who began Coromila. This is his wife here. He's now dead. Died a few years ago. And these are members, some of them are members of my mother's ecumenical prayer group. I think it was originally a prayer group for mothers, and then a nun joined, so it wasn't just a prayer group for mothers anymore. I think it was a prayer group for women, and then a guy wanted to join, so it's just a prayer group, which is great. But yeah, that's been ticking along in the background of my life as I was a child, and even now as well. So they were all there. It was great to see them all there. So there's Ruth answering one of the questions. What I wrote after, I recorded this one as well, but I haven't got it all edited yet. But what I wrote afterwards the next day was, I was honoured to have our articulate young Lord Mayor Nicola Mallon open the Quiet Peacemakers panel discussion and exhibition last night. Legends Father Gerry Reynolds, Reverend Ruth Patterson, and Reverend Ken Newell responded to questions from Derek Poole and members of the audience. Their humility, generosity of spirit, and dedication to humanity highlighted an urgency for action to be taken and called upon a younger generation to take their lead, to lead by example with forgiveness and openness, to demand more of our representative politicians and leaders, and to vocalise and celebrate messages of positivity through the creative arts against the constant noise of negativity from the media. So that kind of sums up the discussion that was happening. The audience were, pretty interactive. This is the guy, I don't know if he's a priest. He must be a priest, but he's the guy who he's like Gerry Reynolds' chauffeur. He brings Gerry to all the events and things. These women who are sitting on the windowsill, they just appeared in the City Hall that day and were able to then go along to the panel discussion. They were American. This is Sandra Rutherford from Fitzroy and my mother's prayer group as well, asking the question. She was asking, who are the young quiet peacemakers? What's happening now? What's in the next generation? And Debbie Waters, who is one of the people I painted from an organisation called Alternatives for Restorative Justice, she answered because she would work a lot with young people and she would be one of the youngest of the people I painted. Even when I went to meet her, she was immaculately turned out. And we went to the park in the Shankill to take the photos, and she was constantly on the phone talking to people about I didn't know what it was, but it was all about people. Basically, that's what she does. She tries to give alternatives for young ones who are just going to get stuck in jail, and she's trying to get them to avoid and trying to liaise between different people. Amazing. And Roger McCallum there as well. He was able to go that night. Chris O'Halloran behind him as well. Derek as well. It comes back to he was giving me a wee plug there, and he was telling everyone that the paintings were for sale for £300 each. So that's part of it as well. I don't know how much I can continue this exhibition because it's I'll have to look for more funding if I want to proceed with it, because it's a big commitment in terms of time, let alone cost. I don't know if I'll get any money back. I think I broke even, and because I got funding for the catalogue, that really helped. So anyway, to continue on, I thought that exhibition was the last one, but then it came here, so nothing's really ever finished. I have got word that there's a woman in the Arts Council in Dublin who's interested in bringing it to New York, but sure, who knows. And I would love to do, more portraits, Derry portraits, maybe Oma, Enniskillen area, all that kind. You could never finish this project. That's the beauty of it, I suppose, as well. It can always be continued, even by other people, whatever. So now. Sometimes it does get a bit depressing. You think, well, what stage are we at? These people are still working away. There's still so much work to be done in the area of peace and reconciliation and community relations. I suppose the thing is that to continue that, a bit like what I was saying, that Ken Newell and Gerry Reynolds and Ruth Patterson, they're calling on us to be positive, to voice positive messages, celebratory messages, instead of get bogged down by what we hear and Stephen Nolan and, you know, the bad stuff that we constantly hear. There's so much brilliant things happening, so many brilliant things happening. So yeah, I'm just going to show all their images because there's a lot of people I didn't mention, such as the dog, for example, up in Drumalis. He even had his own little bit in the catalogue. Sister Scotty, yeah. I don't know if anyone's been up to Drumalis, but the dog is actually a really important part of the whole atmosphere of the whole building. So Scott the dog says, having been repatriated from Tipperary to East Antrim in my early years, I've spent my life learning to live with difference. My contribution to building a peaceful community is to reach out to all creatures with friendship, companionship and acceptance. I walk with them in their joys and sorrows and never reject or condemn them, even though they're very different from me. Yeah, and then the final group, or the dairy. The dairy one's paint is dry now, thankfully. So I'm just going to finish by reading another little bit from that I think I read it earlier. Just read it again from Malky O'Doherty's foreword. So this diversity of responses among people chosen for the mission they shared reminds us how different they are. Probably that they wouldn't even all like each other, that their work for peace and reconciliation is only part of who they are and of who some of them are still yet to be. And yeah, I invite everyone to be part of the Quiet Peacemakers as well. We can all be part of the message that they're trying to give. So yeah, I just invite any questions. Yep.
The majority of the people that you painted weren't Catholic. There was an awful lot of Presbyterians, Methodists, and there was only 3 Catholic priests.
Yeah, I can't remember what the proportion exactly was.
3 Catholic priests.
Yeah, but there's a lot of Catholics.
Yeah.
Or no, sorry, not a lot. Okay, but there's
the majority was either they were different religions.
Yeah.
You know, women as well.
Yeah.
There wasn't very many Catholic people taking part in it.
Yeah, because I talked to when I had to bring the proposal. We went through that, and he counted. It was Ray Mullen. He counted up.
Yeah. Exactly.
Very few. Can't remember. It wasn't very few.
In comparison to the book,
it was maybe two. Was it maybe 2/3? Or
I don't think so. I
don't know. We can count it. You can count it up afterwards and work it out. But
I got that
but anyway, but as I said, like, I'm Catholic. I wasn't going from.
I'm not referring to you.
Yeah, no.
I'm talking about the people that made the most impact in Northern Ireland at that time.
Yeah, I know. But that's what he said, because I was like, Ray, I don't know. I don't even know. Like, I'm just going from what other people have told me. And he said, yeah, but it does reflect that, over the years, the people who have been more active in peace and reconciliation have been maybe the Protestant ministers or whatever.
That's what I'm trying to get across there.
But I don't know. I mean, I think it's different maybe now on the ground. Like, the people, I don't know. I don't know. I'm sure they have all the statistics for exactly what the story is right now.
That's what I
with
got out of reading your book.
The younger people.
I'm sure
might be different.
When you were doing this season, that I get the sense that a lot of the portraits were it was a very organic process, and it wasn't planned in that, you know. And I suppose we get quite hung up in Northern Ireland about counting the numbers, you know, and we know that a lot from the work that we do through our funders and everything else. And I get the sense that this was quite organic, so one thing led to another and led to another, and then when you sit back and reflect and look and think, oh right, so there's that.
Yeah,
that's the way it balances out.
But I mean, I got the funding. It's fitted in with.
And I don't think that, you know, and I think it works. You know, and I think if you start to have to think of it in that way.
Yeah, it's. Yeah, I think my naivety worked in my advantage.
Yes.
There's that part of it. I think that your title for the whole exhibition is actually saying exactly what it is, because there are a lot of people out there who are quietly working on the background. The more likely people will not know about, have never heard about, and really don't know what they're doing. So I take on board what you said at the beginning. You went on communication that was given to you by other people, and that's where you work from, and I think that was an excellent way to do it. I would never want you to even think that this has been a sectarian head count on this, because they are real people who have been working quietly in the background with it. But there has been other people who will remain quiet, and that's okay as well. And I heard your comment about the politicians. I wouldn't get hung up with politicians that come to their exhibition. There's other reasons. They could have been busy, could have been doing other things, but they are quietly also doing their bit. They're still there. They're still at Stormont, and there's other people like the people up there who are doing work quietly in the background, who are in many ways supporting what they're doing. Because if Stormont breaks down, we're back in there. Another era again.
Yeah,
So
I think it was in that
Quiet
174 Trust. There was a lot of discussion about the politicians and leadership. There was a lot about leadership. And
but the politicians didn't
how
support it
important leadership was, that they had to work with the leaders all the time.
I wouldn't get too hung up about it. They're doing their bit. People like us up on the board, they're doing their bit, and we're all trying to work in some way, whatever it is we're working towards. But what we want to do is not return to the violence that it was. And again, the message that I always is the conflict's been transformed to be less violent, and I think you got it right. We have a lot more work to do. And I commend you for even doing this type of work anyways, because it's all part and parcel. See the panel discussions? Look what it sparked. You might not get those people on the roof you hadn't had this exhibition. So there's all that positivity that's going on out there. So don't get into the negative about people not turning up to the exhibition. You don't know.
That's just me as an artist, though.
I know, and it's a difficult balance, because what you've been doing, and as I said, to me, it's a very organic thing that's kind of grown into this project and exhibition. And I think as an artist, that's maybe a challenge for you as an artist, you know, in that sense, because it's more than just doing a portrait. I mean, you'll always put a bit of yourself or the
totally.
person's.
Well, it's also, you know, that's the thing with wherever I wrote, like, what now? It's like, this is only part of my work as an artist, and in some ways I was kind of really relieved whenever it was the final exhibition. I was like, right, I can draw a line under it and just go and do my other stuff, or, you know, and then other people would come and say, oh, can you do this, and can you do that? Oh, why don't you do this whole series? And yeah, so it is kind of life as an artist, like, it's just part of it, and it has been kind of crazy that it like that. The more people went to my exhibition in Stormont than have gone to any exhibition I've ever had before. So then I kind of struggle with, is this the area that I should be concentrating on then, or does the other areas of my work not merit so much attention? So a lot of things come into question about myself as an artist as well.
That, you know, elements of this have been funded. Because I noticed that when you hung in Stormont, there were no frames, as we can see the frames on, and actually it worked well in that raw form, but the frames are beautiful too. And then you said, well, somebody sponsored you to get them through, or there was a fundraising effort to get. So you've done this at a great, probably from an artist's point of view, a personal cost. And people have to remember as well, if they know artists, that, you know, this is how you make your living. So this is so it's getting that balance for you. It's, you know, so it's like, well, do I sell them? Do I keep them? You know, how much do I sell them for? Do people want to buy them? If they don't buy them, does that mean I'm not a good artist? Do they not want, you know, there's a whole, so I mean, I think what you've done is fabulous, and I think, you know, here in Holywell, we'd certainly like to point you in the right direction in terms of Derry Peacemakers, because I know sitting in this room we could probably come up with at least half a dozen names, no problem for you at all, and also the idea of young quiet peacemakers as well, you know, so we'll certainly keep that conversation going, you know, as time goes on, and see how we can maybe facilitate that in some way, you know, because obviously there is a cost to all of this. You know, that's the reality. And beautiful that you have a beautiful touch. You know, you've captured people that we don't know, but everything is very different and very individual, and, you know, it's been great to see them here, and hopefully maybe in another year or so whole room of Derry quiet peacemakers.
Yeah. Any other questions?
What about the not so quiet ones?
Big baby James.
And behind each person, because there were some people I was meeting them and I was like, I should be painting you and your wife, really, instead of just you, or I should be painting you and your child, or, you know, every family was the support to each person in every organisation. Each person who worked in an organisation had a whole team of people who, you know, supported them to do the work that they did. So
It's very hard when you start and where do you end.
yeah, it's pretty overwhelming.
You captured it really well so far. I think it works really well. And you know that there are a lot of people coming through this building, and I'm still trying to encourage people to fill in. So anybody's here now, please leave a little comment in the book. People do see it, even though they maybe don't say they've seen it in the book. So please leave a little comment. You know, Susan will really appreciate it, and we really appreciate it as well. And maybe if you get time to come back and read the catalogue and buy the catalogue and just, you know, spend a little bit of time, because it's always lovely to have exhibitions of this quality here, because you do get to spend time with them, and they become very much part of the building for a short period of time, and everybody gets used to seeing them. And I think so far we've really enjoyed it. It's here for another week and a half or so, another couple of weeks anyway, so please keep, you know, and tell your friends or people that maybe haven't seen. We do get a lot of footfall coming through, you'd be surprised, you know, so there'll be quite a lot of people coming through to see it.
Yeah.
More than you will realise.
Yeah.
So say
Well-
they don't always leave a comment.
Well, thank you so much all for coming out and coming along at lunchtime. And thank you, Susan, for organising the whole thing. It's been an honour to exhibit here. Thank you. So I was invited by Susan Glass from the Holywell Trust to exhibit the Quiet Peacemaker portraits, and also to give a presentation to explain the development of the whole process of the exhibition.